All right. Well, first of all, thank you everyone for being here. It is very much appreciated. I'm very happy that I was able to get together this town hall. I know that a lot of constituents have come to me about issues on Old County Road, and also Senator Hansen, who's here, and also about specifically the study that was done a while back and things that were and were not implemented and why. And I know that some of you live on Old County Road, some of you travel it a lot. So thank you for being here. Just FYI, this town hall tonight is strictly about Old County Road. It's taken a while to put this together and we appreciate everyone's time, but we will only be talking about Old County Road. We're not talking about, this isn't a general town hall. I hold those quite often and you're certainly free to reach out to me with other issues. But we won't be talking about legislative issues or any other political issues. We're also not going to be talking about other roads per se. A quick question will be okay later, but we're focusing strictly tonight on Old County Road. And just, not to sound harsh, but if we do have anyone who is not wanting to talk about or ask questions about Old County Road, once you're recognized, then we will mute. Senator Hansen, did you have anything that you wanted to say before we turn it over to the wonderful folks at DelDOT?
Well, just to thank you for getting this together. This is great. You put a lot of work into getting this up and going, and I truly appreciate that. And we also really appreciate DelDOT being available and putting together these forums for us. I think this is the third or the fourth one that that you and I have done, Eric, and DelDOT does a great job at getting this together and letting us know about, in this case, all of the various studies that have happened along Old County Road since, I guess, about 2005. And I think that they're going to go over these and how they all work together and how one may influence another, because there's been a lot of them. So again, I just thank you for putting this together. Thank you everyone for being here. 32 folks are here, it looks like right now, and that's wonderful. That's a great attendance for tonight. And I'll turn it back to Representative Morrison and to DelDOT.
And did we have either of our councilmen here? I don't think we do. I think one of them at least may join us later, but I'll go ahead and turn this over to Mark. Thank you, Mark.
Great, thanks Representative Morrison and Senator Hansen. Thanks for having us this evening. My name is Mark. I'll introduce myself and at least the DelDOT folks that are on the call. My name is Mark Lutz. I'm a Deputy Director here at DelDOT. I have all the main design groups in DelDOT are under my supervision, including roads, bridges, traffic signals, and a lot of other stuff that I won't get into. But that's my role here. We also have several other folks. I'm going to probably be the main person going through the presentation, but I have a bunch of other folks on to help answer questions as needed. We have Pam Steinbach, who is currently our Chief of Project Development North, who implements or designs a lot of the road projects in Newcastle County, including projects like the Route 4896 intergrade separation just nearby to this project. And now that's her current role. She is shifting over to, she just got promoted. She is our new Director of the Division of Planning. So she's now going to be involved more in the front end of these projects, that's kind of what we're going to be talking about tonight. We also have Amy String, our Chief of Legislative Relations, Josh Thomas, a planner in our planning division, Mike Duras, a manager in our planning division, Megan Barna, our constituent relations specialist. And I think I covered everybody except for Todd Revis, who is our Director of Tech and Innovation. And Todd, I'm going to, I guess, hand it over to you if you want to give a few words to the folks about how to interact with us this evening.
Sure thing. Good evening, all, and welcome. I want to provide some quick instructions on how we'll handle questions during today's Old County Road Virtual Town Hall. If you would like to type your question in the Zoom session, and we've already had someone do that, please use the Q&A function. If you've joined the session by PC or other microphone-enabled device, you can also raise your hand to ask a question. To raise your hand, look for the raise hand button on the menu at the bottom of your screen. If you're dialed in by phone only, you can also press *9 to raise your hand. Keep in mind, we won't know your name, so we'll identify you by your phone number when we call on you. You can also press *3 to unmute yourself. We also have closed captioning. If you click the associated button at the bottom of your screen, you can see that. And also, I want to point out that if you dialed in by phone, maybe because you couldn't get on from your computer, feel free to try again on your computer using the phone passcode. The letter accidentally omitted a digit, so we wanted to point that out. The complete passcode is 095228. And with that, I'll turn it back over to you all and confirm that we are also recording. Thank you.
And if I can jump in just super quick, I do want to recognize Councilman Dave Tackett and Councilman Dave Carter. They have joined us. So thank you, gentlemen.
All right, great. So thanks everybody. And in addition to my role at DelDOT, as you see, obviously we have the aerial photo. I live within this photo, so I'm a user of this road on a frequent basis. I live in Rose Hill. I have 3 teenage boys who love baseball, so a good part of my life is going back and forth from Rose Hill to Canal Little League. So I use this road quite frequently, and really since COVID hit, I ride my bike a lot, and in fact I was riding my bike on Old County Road just earlier this week. So I might be asking questions of DelDOT as well, but I'll try not to do that. So. All right, let's see if I can get this show moving. Here we go. All right, so what I want to go over today, here's the agenda, talk a little bit about background, projects in the area, some of the land development along Old County Road, some of the safety data we have. I'm going to talk a bit more about this 2005 study that I think a lot of you are familiar with, and what was in that, and then the path forward on how potential projects could happen moving into the future on Old County Road. So a little bit of background, at least within recent memory, the first project was, the first time a significant project was recommended on Old County Road came out of a Route 40 corridor study that was completed in 2000. So that study made a lot of recommendations all up and down the Route 40 corridor from Route 1 all the way over to the state line. And a lot of the changes you've seen on Route 40 and surrounding roads have come out of that kind of master plan for Route 40, including, again, I referenced it earlier, the grade separated intersection that we're working on in design right now at Route 40 and 896. So that study had recommendations for sidewalks along Old County Road from Fraser to Glasgow Avenue. Then in 2004, the General Assembly directed DelDOT to do a study of Old County Road based on concerns about increased traffic congestion and public safety. So I did just want to note that really since that time, traffic volumes haven't really changed a whole much. So again, there was definitely a concern in 2004 about increased traffic volumes. Since that time, the traffic at the time was 3,200 vehicles a day. The highest value we've seen in our annual count program was in 2017, which was 3,400 vehicles a day. So for just the facts, for good or bad, the traffic on Old County Road has not really increased as much as was expected 15 years ago. So DelDOT at the time, again, through the bond bill language, did a study of Old County Road. We had a public workshop in late 2004 where we talked about the existing conditions. We looked at some alternatives. We had a good attendance at that meeting. Apparently we had 82 people there. This was before my time at DelDOT. But I've talked to the folks that were involved, and the concerns at the time, they're listed there on the screen. You can see drainage, speeding, multimodal facilities, and et cetera. So DelDOT completed that study in 2005, and again, kind of laid out. It was a little bit more than just the sidewalks, which was what was in the Route 40 plan. It really had shoulders, and as well as multimodal facilities. And I'll talk more about later on, more detail about what the recommendations, the road recommendations were in that study. But really, the point of this slide was when that study was completed, like that really ended. Nothing else has really happened with that study. So, and I'm going to talk later on, and some of my counterparts from the Division of Planning can help me out if needed. But really, when a study of that level is completed, it then needs to get put into this document called the Capital Transportation Plan. And that Capital Transportation Plan is a statewide document that spells out really what DelDOT works on. And there's a whole process related to that. Again, we'll get more into that later, but it's related to the metropolitan planning organizations. DelDOT's obviously involved, the public's involved, there's a public input process, but after that study was completed, at no point between 2005 and now was a project actually put into that capital transportation plan. So that's from a study standpoint, it's been sitting on the shelf since 2005. And again, I'll talk more about what's in that, and if there's interest in getting it off the shelf, what needs to be done. So that'll be later on in the presentation. So I wanted to cover several other related projects that have or will happen in and around the area. So one relatively minor thing, but in 2012, we modified the intersection with Old County and Glasgow Ave. Everything on this slide focuses on the intersection at Glasgow Avenue. We installed the island to hopefully make the right turn movements a little more smooth there. Then there was a pretty big study that was conducted by, again, well, I don't know if I said the name yet, the Wilmington Area Planning Council, which is WILMAPCO for short. And that study was completed in 2017, which covered Glasgow Avenue from Route 40 down to 896. So related to Old County Road, they had a roundabout recommended at the intersection of Old County and Glasgow Avenue. There was also a traffic impact study done for the Glasgow Commons development, which is right across from People's Plaza, which those two studies kind of went in tandem. So they were basically consistent recommendations. And then more recently, our traffic studies group was asked to look at the intersection of Glasgow and Old County. And they didn't dive into it in too much depth because they knew these other projects were out there. But they did have some minor signing recommendations for the intersection of Glasgow Avenue and Old County Road. So here is that intersection, and this is a graphic right out of the WILMAPCO study showing conceptually what a roundabout would look like from above if implemented at, again, Old County and Glasgow Avenue. Some other projects just in the area to fill in the whole picture. Those of you, I think you all live, if you don't live on Old County Road, I assume you live nearby. You know there's a lot of paving going on in the area. We've paved most of Fraser, and we're going to be closing the northern section, I think, starting next week to finish off some of that paving. We did a lot of patching on Old County Road last year. We had Old County Road was closed, I think last year as well, for the pipe replacement there. So we've had a lot of kind of asset management projects in the area. We have reviewed a request for us to look at a traffic signal at Old County and Fraser. And our engineering study on that determined that that was not necessary. And instead, we just, again, if you drive through the area, you probably realize that we kind of souped up the signing and the striping at that always stop controlled intersection. The stop signs are bigger now. We put stop word markings on the pavement. So all that was installed in April of this year. We also looked at some truck restrictions on Old County Road and made sure that the truck restriction signs and the speed limit signs were properly implemented on Old County Road. And then we have a study that's still in progress. It's a statewide study. We're looking at every horizontal curve in the state. And I don't have the number in front of me, but there's thousands and thousands of curves throughout the state. And we're making sure that all those curves have the proper signs on them, warning signs or the chevron signs that, you know, you have on sharp curves. And so that is in progress on Old County Road. And I expect those signs would be implemented. Any signing improvements needed would, if not by the end of the year, they would be early next year. So from a land development standpoint, I don't, probably not telling you anything you all don't know already, but of course you have the Farmington development sort of on the, you know, closer to Fraser Road that was built in the early 2000s. And then we have the senior living facility that is proposed just a little bit west of the conservation district on the south side of Old County Road. I don't remember if Senator Hansen was there, but I remember Councilman Carter and Tackett and myself and former Representative Jakes. It seems like 1,000 years ago met in the conservation district to talk about that development back in 2019. So some of you might have been at that meeting as well. From a safety standpoint, the DelDOT we review crash data statewide on an annual basis in something called our hazard elimination program. And we then study and do projects at the worst crash locations that we find throughout the whole state. So on the good side for Old County Road, it's never been identified as one of the top crash locations in the state that has had us then study this corridor through that program. On the negative side, it still has a significantly higher crash rate than average for similar roads throughout Delaware, about 2.5 times higher the average crash rate. So again, I don't know, you could look at that as an optimist or a pessimist, but it's the road for reference, the roads and the intersections that we typically end up studying through the statewide hazard elimination program, they usually have a crash rate in the range of 5 or 6 times higher than the statewide average. So Old County Road's not anywhere near that level, but it's certainly it's higher than average. And then I have some crash data on the screen there. So we've had 21 total crashes at the Fraser Road intersection, and then, you know, another part of our statewide process is we on an annual basis, we have a ranking process. It looks at total crashes and the severity of crashes, where, you know, a fatal crash or an injury crash gets a higher ranking than a property damage crash. So based on that process, the Fraser Road intersection was ranked number 462 in the state, while the Glasgow Avenue intersection was ranked number 544. So for, you know, when I hear 21 crashes, I don't know what that means. You know, there could be 50 crashes, there could be 5 crashes, but hopefully the rankings help you better understand where this is compared to other intersections throughout the state. And again, like I talked about earlier, Glasgow Avenue is recommended to be converted to a roundabout through that Glasgow Avenue project. I might have skipped over that. I did skip over that. So the roundabout, again, this roundabout so that study did get put into the capital transportation program I was talking about earlier, and I forgot to hit this. Design on that is going to start in a few months, and we'll go through the design process. Then obviously we'll have more public meetings to meet with everybody to get input, and then there'll be right away that has to happen, and then it'll go to construction. So that roundabout and the rest of the Glasgow Avenue project that was recommended by that 2017 study should be, again, we'll be out to the public in 2022 to talk more about the design, and the long-term schedule is it should be starting in construction in 2026. Sorry, I skipped over that a little too quickly. All right, so now going back to Old County Road and this 2005 study, it had recommended that we improve the road to 11-foot travel lanes, 8-foot shoulders, and a 10-foot wide multi-use path on one side of the road. So what I want to show over the next few slides and talk a little bit about the impacts that that type of a project would have on Old County Road and the properties adjacent to Old County Road. We would definitely have right-of-way impacts. We would have to purchase right-of-way all up and down the corridor. And there would be utility impacts where we'd definitely have the most obvious is the overhead utility line that runs on the south side of the road. That would have to be relocated. I'm sure that there are underground utilities that would have to be adjusted as well. And then there would be environmental impacts. We are definitely would be hitting some wetlands. There are cultural resources. There's potentially historic properties along the road from both an architectural and archaeological standpoint, and trees that we would definitely be hitting and removing basically all the trees that are close to the road. And there's some pretty big, beautiful trees that are pretty close to the road right now that would have to be removed as part of any kind of a project that is the scope of what we're talking about here. So here's an image that shows a little bit about, this is just the kind of the back entrance to the conservation district on the south side, Dolphin Drive on the north side. So north might be a little bit hard to see there, but north is facing up as we try to do in transportation. And this doesn't give you a great view, and in a virtual setting, it's hard to show it, but hopefully these next couple renderings give you a better idea of what the impact of that project would be on this piece of road. So we're gonna take a look from kind of near the conservation district, looking west towards Fraser Road. And so that's what it looks like today. Again, you all live there, so you know this very well. And I'm gonna flip back and forth a couple of times. This is our artist rendering of what the project could look like if that project were prioritized, designed, and built. So obviously the road looks better. You have the path on the left side of the screen. The parts, as I flip back and forth, I want you to look at though are, how much closer the road is going to be to the houses. Take a look in the distance down the road. And again, this is an artist rendering, so it's our best guess. The tree canopy will definitely be pulled back. Like, this is a road that has a really nice canopy. You almost feel like you're in a tunnel sometimes, and that canopy will definitely be pulled farther back with any kind of a road project. And it's not just the road. It's not good. It's not really easy to see in this rendering, but on the edge of the road, there's drainage swales as well. So that's gonna eat into front yards as well. Here's another location a little bit closer to Puffer Drive, and now looking back towards Glasgow Avenue. So depending on how big your monitor is, the fire signal there at the Etna station is kind of in the distance. And again, that's what it looks like today. And there's our best guess for now as to what it would look like in the future if this project were to happen. So again, kind of flipping back and forth, you can notice obviously the road is wider, the path is there, the utilities are moved. But again, as you look off into the distance, the canopy is definitely pulled back significantly. There's some pretty nice big trees that would be removed, etc. So if this became a real project, we wouldn't just go with the recommendations from that 2005 study. Of course, that's old at this point. We would really revisit what we were looking at here. We would be looking at the possibility of turn lanes at some of the intersections. We would probably look at the possibility of a roundabout at Old County and Fraser. We would look at different shoulder options, I don't think in our mentality today, we would go with an 8-foot shoulder. I would think we would probably go with a 5-foot shoulder. And then potentially even part of that 5-foot shoulder could be paved and maybe the rest of it could be unpaved, particularly because we would likely have this multi-use path out there as well, where you would, pedestrian and bicyclists, if they can be separated on this multi-use path, you probably don't need full 5-foot shoulders. So, and then drainage, we would look at whether we have a closed drainage system or an open drainage system, or some combination thereof. So those are just things, if this became a project, what we would look at from a DelDOT standpoint, we would look at options, we would take it out to the public, we would get input, and kind of follow the typical DelDOT process moving on from there.
And Mark, could I jump in real quick? Sorry. to interrupt.
Absolutely.
Because I know that when we had a meeting before, to talk about this, one of the things that really, left an impression on me, aside from getting rid of all the trees, and the marshland or what have you, which I'm not a fan of per se, but is that a number of people would have to give away part of their front yards for all of this. So could you elaborate on that a little bit and just kind of, make sure people understand that?
Absolutely. So we don't know how many feet of front yard you would lose, but it would be, it could be significant. So the exact amount would be, of course, based on what I was saying there. If we look at refined options, so the original recommendation, which was 11-foot lanes, 8-foot shoulders, and then that 10-foot path, which is, again, it's a little hard to see. This would be better if we were in person and we could have a roll map or a board and we could really zoom in and look at it more closely. The road today is roughly 20 to 22 feet wide. And so you can just add it up and see, we're talking, if you add 8 feet of shoulder and then a buffer and then 10 foot of a path, to the south side of the road, we're probably to the edge of the path, we're easily 25 feet off the existing edge of the road, and then the drainage. So then you have the drainage on top of that. So we would look at also, can or should we shift the center line of the road to balance that out, or does it make sense to keep it, more shifted to the south side than the north side, or can we shift the road a little bit to try to minimize impact? So we would look at all of that when we get farther in design. But yes, but between the shoulder, the buffer, the path, the utilities, and we would beyond all that, we would need construction easements. We're definitely talking about significant property impacts would be on this. Now, again, I think what we would do is we would look to try to meet the needs of this project, which would be reducing crashes and, increasing multimodal, those kind of needs and goals with the minimum impact possible. So I think we would probably come in with something that's not as wide and as impactful as what we're showing here, which came out of the 2005 study. I think we can do something more narrow than that. But if you're still trying to address safety and multimodal, you're definitely going to have right-of-way impacts. Yeah,
Mark, and just to play onto that, and Representative Morrison, I just want to make sure I know sometimes the devil's in the details, and I do want to make sure when you say give away right of way, we wouldn't expect anybody to give their we do the fair market value and such. So just to make sure that we wouldn't, if somebody wanted to donate the right of way, we wouldn't be adverse to that. But regardless, and just to further that, what Mark with that larger footprint, and I think towards the end we will definitely open it up for comments and questions. One, just to make sure that the intention of what we did in 2005 are the same. We want to make sure that the concerns are the same, or if those concerns have changed, like, is it only safety? Is it you don't care about multimodal, like that kind of thing? But with this concept plan, as you can see just on that north side there, we would also have to possibly contend with septic tank issues and things. There are a lot of places where and I'm not sure if this has sewer or not. I would doubt it, but not all the time are the septic tanks in the back of the yard. So if there are in the front, that would require a whole host of of things. So sometimes the rendering, it looks beautiful because it's brand new pavement and there's no cars on it, and that kind of stuff, but just to keep that into perspective.
And to add on to that again about the right of way. So yes, we would pay you for your right of way, but it wouldn't be optional. So once we have a project and it's moving ahead and we have, like anything else, if everybody in the corridor was opposed to it, we would end up canceling it. But if like a couple people are opposed, we're the state and we have the power of condemnation. So we'll pay you for it, but it wouldn't be optional. Like we would take the right of way that we would need to make the project happen. So.
And what, if I can jump in real quick, so what's the balance there? Is it like 80% of people have to agree and then the other 20% you take it forcibly, or how does that work?
No, there's no one number on that, Representative. It's we try to build a consensus as best as we can. Honestly, again, if a project is controversial enough, it ends up getting canceled. But there's not any one number there. And I'll talk more again about how this were to become a project. But once it becomes a project, we're going to have public meetings. We would, if needed, we could create even a advisory group, like just of the residents on this corridor, to go through again, like Pam says now, we want to understand the concerns of the community now, and then we can help give you guidance on what to do to move ahead. But we would do that again, once the project started in design, we would, get into more again, because everything we put together today was kind of somewhat off the cuff. This was, for this presentation purpose, we would look at again, do you want the path on the north side or do you want it on the south side? Do you maybe just need a sidewalk instead of a path? What do you think about 2-foot shoulders, 5-foot shoulders? What do you think about a roundabout? Do you think you need a turn lane at the developments? We would talk through all that, the pros and cons, the impacts, all of these things we would get into in much, much more detail and involve the public, as much as possible if and when it were in design.
So Mark, this is Councilman Carter.
Yes.
One of the things you're looking at is what we have to fix to meet the needs of today and what might be coming down the road. And this seems to me an area that we fix for the immediate needs today of what the community is. Hopefully that's a lesser scale, and we start talking about corridor preservation here. I mean, this is a critical natural area through Frenchtown Woods. We have drainage issues that are almost insurmountable in addition to the road. And I think my hope is that the county, with our open space program and maybe teaming with the state with their open space program, will add that other dimension to talk about corridor preservation, where you have to fix what you have to do, but maybe if you go on the smaller scale to meet the needs, maybe with a roundabout and a 2-foot shoulder, that may work well as long as we don't put any more development in there. And that's where I think corridor preservation might be a strategy that I hope you guys will add in there and urge the county and maybe DNREC or other parts of the state to help you do that, because it's going to cost you a lot of money to fix this road. If we put more demand on it, I think it'd be cheaper to protect a little bit of land that's left there. So hopefully you can add that in.
Understood. I think the last slide I have is this one. So kind of wrapping up, I went longer than I thought I would go, so hopefully I wasn't boring you all to tears. In the short term, we had some, minor traffic engineering modifications. Like I said, the stop signs, warning signs, and striping, that's all done at Fraser. And the speed limit signs and the truck restriction signs on Old County, those are all implemented. And we'll have some of those likely some additional horizontal curve warning signs coming in the near future. So that's the short term. In the long term, I talked about the roundabout at Glasgow Avenue and the whole, again, I didn't get into the whole Glasgow Avenue project, but that's that whole corridor, again, really from Route 40 down to 896. And but related to Old County, As of now, right now, the roundabout is proposed at that intersection, and we expect that to operate, both from a safety and a delay perspective, should operate significantly better than the intersection that's there now. Again, I've many times I've sat 6 or 7 cars back waiting to get a gap in traffic on Glasgow Avenue to turn left off of Old County Road. So I know what it's like to wait there. And then for the rest of the corridor, so everything west of Glasgow Avenue, there's currently nothing on our books for that right now. Like I talked about earlier, that 2005 study didn't go anywhere. And so if there's interest, and again, hopefully we talked about was, or what I emphasized was that, that's going to be a pretty impactful project. But if there's an interest in moving ahead with that needs to move forward through the WillMapCo capital project nomination process. So that's a matter of citizens or legislators or council folks working through the WillMapCo process, which again, WillMapCo stands for Wilmington Area Planning Council, and that metropolitan planning organization works on I usually just go with the capital transportation plan, which is the document DelDOT uses. There's also some other federal language related to the transportation improvement plan and other wording like that. But it would really need to be, again, citizens working through WillMapCo to have that nominated as a project. And then it gets put into that CTP, and then that schedules it. So for instance, we're going to have workshops in September about the next CTP, which is going to cover fiscal years 23 to 28. So right now we're working on the fiscal year 21 to 26 CTP, and those are the projects that we're working on now. WillMapCo and DelDOT are going to have a workshop in September to talk about this 23 to 28 plan, which would, again, just keep shifting out 2 years into the future and keeping the ball rolling. So that would be what needs to happen to turn this study and idea into a project, would be working through that WillMapCo process. And so there's my contact info, and that covers the presentation. And happy to hand it back to Representative Morrison, Senator Hansen, Councilman Carter, Tackett, however you want to, if you all have additional questions, or if we want to start going to some of the questions that are coming in through the chat box.
Yeah, and thank you so much, Mark, and thank you everybody at DelDOT and Councilman Carter as well. I think this was very thorough and very helpful. I'm just looking at the Q&A, and I'll let Megan handle, the questions. She's going to do that for us. Mrs. Townsend, I believe that I am working with you on putting that guardrail up. So I appreciate your reaching out to me about that. And like I said to you before, that is in the works, and I'll have more information for you in August on that. But otherwise, Megan, I will let you handle the questions, if that's okay.
Sure. I guess to start, there's a comment from Steve Griffith that there was at least one fatality at the curve on Old County this year. Yes,
the crash data, I did forget to mention that. The crash data that I had up there was pulled. I forgot to mention that. I apologize. It did not include that fatality. That fatality was not yet in the system when we pulled the data. When there's a fatality, there's a much longer investigation involved, and it doesn't get into the system as quickly. So that is a good point. I apologize for missing that. So that was close to the Farmington development, and my understanding is that it was somebody. Passing in a no passing zone. That's about what I know about that fatal crash.
Okay, so the next question is from Linda Adams. It says, from what I gather, you were discussing and showing Old County closer to Glasgow Avenue. What about from Adams Run development to Fraser? Will you come to that? What about the curve in the road?
Right. So what we put together for today was really kind of a somewhat of a quick and dirty. It actually looks better than I expected it to look, given that, again, we don't have a project out here right now. So we kind of did this kind of on the side. So we just picked a couple locations that we had some good pictures of, and we wanted to show the impacts. So no, we don't have anything farther down, but again, if this became a real project, we would have more detail all up and down the road. But I think hopefully what I conveyed would give you an idea of the impacts wherever you are along the roadway, especially if you live along the roadway. You know, if your driveway's, 30 feet long right now, it might only be 15 feet long when we're done. So again, hopefully you can take the information that I presented and kind of apply it to where you live along the road.
Okay, so Anne has commented, there seems to be a lot to consider here. The road was inadequate and development happened anyway, but no improvements happened, and now folks have to start from scratch. Please provide us with a letter to Newcastle County Land Use for the comprehensive plan to curtail development given the current circumstances discussed here now.
So I don't know if that's DelDOT's role. The new development of the senior living facility is going to, the access of that facility is going to meet DelDOT's entrance requirements. And that's because that facility in particular generates pretty low traffic volumes. Again, I referenced it. We had a big meeting at the Conservation District. I think it was in September 2019, where we went over a lot of that. So again, that newest development on Old County Road is going to meet all of DelDOT's requirements, and I assume if it has county approval, it's meeting all the county requirements as well. So I see Pam unmuted if you want to jump in.
Yes. So my limited amount of planning experience, being that I officially start on Monday. So, I mean, there really is no, in terms of curtailing. So if somebody owns a property, they want to develop it, as long as they adhere to the county requirements, they adhere to the zoning, the UDC, and they follow our application and submission guidelines for recordation, for improvements to whether it be if they need to put in turn lanes or shoulders or a shared use path. There really is no, like, just because we say so that we can curtail them. That
So Pam,
it's a very specific. Oh, I'm sorry. Please go ahead.
let me add something here. I mean, I have asked of our planning department to consider some downzoning in the area, some added conservation for the stuff. So if nothing else, our comprehensive plan needs to go through the state plus process, and DelDOT has a person. If you do a review that shows that it would be easier for you to address the issues of this road if it was part of what I talked about, a corridor preservation, DelDOT can't necessarily do that as well as a county zoning agency can. And, I put that recommendation in, and if you find it would be more helpful, so you don't have more expansion, to say, yeah, this is a good area to do a little bit of corridor preservation, and we would support the county trying to do that. That would be very helpful, because then, based on that comp plan, that recommendation, we get it in there, we can change our county ordinance, we can change the UDC, we can look at things to protect that area and change the zoning around there. What we're dealing with here is, unfortunately, DelDOT has to respond on the downstream end of this. It costs you a lot of money. And I think we need to be more proactive. And I would love to get, I'm going to fight for it, I can tell you that now, but I would love to have you know, even if it was just an encouragement from DelDOT, encourage us to do some of that, to change some zoning so that you guys don't get stuck footing the big bill.
Councilman,
And you can do that through plus or other ways. I don't care. It'd be helpful.
I have a thought as well. I mean, I think maybe since DelDOT's at the kind of the downstream end of the development process, maybe something further up in the upstream development process, like pushing harder for this to be part of the Frenchtown Woods natural area, like a more formalization of that, and more, you know, kind of more requirements associated with that. Maybe that's something, some way that we can begin to sort of, I guess, stack the deck a little bit, so it makes it much more difficult. It's not as attractive to develop because it's a natural area. It's recognized as a natural area. There's a lot of community interest in it. Maybe the property owners are getting some sort of a tax advantage to keep it a natural area. So it keeps the development pressure off of it that way as well.
Exactly. That very good points. I mean, that is somewhat, you know, we fortunately or unfortunately, we are on the downstream end, where once they get everything in place with the county, then they come to us for the entrance and the recordation, and then it's just, you know, us making sure that they're going to provide the necessary improvements for the number of trips that they're going to generate. So those are all great ideas.
Anything you guys can identify, as long as I'm on council, anything to help you down the road to get out in front of it. I don't know if I'll get 7 votes, but I'll fight really hard for it, because, you know, it's just, we try and have you guys fix these things afterwards. It's really expensive. Sometimes it's just your options are so limited. I want to get out in front of this whenever we can. So anything you can do to kind of encourage we address it through the comp plan so that you don't get stuck holding the bill, it'd be helpful.
And I don't want to, so just so the folks understand, like the senior living facility from a traffic generation standpoint is pretty small. A bigger development would have more requirements. They would have to do a more formal traffic impact study, which would look at a longer stretch of the road and off-site improvements. So a bigger development would have more DelDOT requirements than a small development like the senior living facility. But, you know, the incremental small things over time, those are the ones that we end up really trying to catch up with. And, you know, I don't know if there's a lot of additional, I mean, Councilman, you might know better than me. I don't know if there's a lot of additional growth potential right on Old County Road, because there are you know, a lot of that land I suspect might be very difficult to develop, given that it's a lot of wetlands and other things. It might not be, but even if it's not, there's a lot of farms,
Yeah.
you know, right down the street there. And, you know, that,
way, yeah.
right. Like just, you know, look at the aerials over time.
I mean, you got the Cook farm down the road. You've got,
Right.
You know, and we need to, we're very close to the carrying capacity for a lot of infrastructure here. We're very close with the upgrades we had to do with sewer.
Right.
I don't know how much more you can do with the wetlands and stuff to fix the roads if we get any more, you know, and I know we're focusing in the county on land preservation, farm preservation south of the canal, but that's not the only area that we need to have some of this taking place. And I think we just need to coordinate it. And, you know, the frustration I get is even when we press for infill, it's wonderful infill, but when we look at the cumulative impact and we do a bunch of those, they add up. And then we're struggling with it. And I just want to get out in front of it. I mean, for my, you know, my public works guys dealing with sewer, for Kevin Donnelly in the district dealing with drainage, and for you guys in DelDOT, you know, we got to stop this site by site review, and the comp plan is a place to look at this stuff collectively. And that's what I'm hoping we'll do here. So any ideas you have, please just, even if it's a kind of a soft encouragement recommendation for that comp plan, because then I can take it as a councilman and press it as hard as I want. You know, but if it's something you think will save you money down the road, get it into us.
Hey, I believe the next 2 questions we've addressed. Ms. Towson, I know we are looking into the guardrail request. Mr. Griffith, I think our conversation now just should have addressed your question. There is a comment, and Mark, I don't know if you just can clarify. It says, based on the tone of the presentation, it sounds like this project will not happen. I don't know if you want to talk about the likelihood or where we kind of go from here.
So there is no project right now in DelDOT's world. Like I said, the study was done in 2005, and really nothing has happened since then. So for it to become a project, the public, the legislators really need to work through the WMAPCO process to kind of pull the study out of the study and put it into the capital transportation plan, and then it would get scheduled. And when the money fell into the right fiscal year, we would start working on it, and then it would become a project.
Yeah, Mark, and I'm sorry, and I don't know if you said it, but just in between then, from the bringing it to WMAPCO for inclusion, it would then have to get, prioritized and ranked with all of the other projects that are planning for the whole date. So, and Josh or Mike, I'm not sure if you want to add anything into that. They're kind of like our gurus for that. But
hey, Pam, it's Josh.
Hey, Josh.
Hey, good evening, everyone. Yeah, I can add a little bit. Mark has done a great job just talking about WMAPCO and their importance in this process, because we do use a large portion of our funds for the CTP, our federal funds. So not only are they just active partners with us in transportation planning, they're also it is a federal requirement that all of our programming goes through this metropolitan planning organization. So they are crucial to the process. And as Pam was saying, there are a couple of steps in there that have to happen. So for example, the MPO has already completed a study. We already talked about that. So working through the MPO's kind of public input process, that would have to go into the long-range transportation plan. And then in that long-range transportation plan is a large list of projects that are what we call fiscally constrained. And that just means that we have an estimate of the number of capital funds that will be available for projects over a 20-year period, 20 to 30 year period. And from that list, all the candidate projects are selected. So during the CTP development process, a handful of projects are selected from that long-range plan, and then they go through the prioritization process, like Pam mentioned. So and WMAPCO definitely a great partner to work through on the process, and they can visit their website, and they can you can call them, and they can walk you through any of the upcoming timelines. But the CTP is the development cycle that's a 2-year cycle now, so we're always we're constantly working on the next program. So hopefully that sheds a little bit more light. But yeah, I would definitely encourage those listening in today to visit the WMAPCO website. Send them any questions you have about their process, and because there's really no way to predict the likelihood of a project moving forward, because a lot of pieces have to kind of all align.
It is, so we didn't really answer the question because there's a lot of variables in there, but I will tell you easily that if a project were to happen, it is still many years away. So again, the plan that is going to be looked at for this fall is for fiscal year 23 to 28. And any new projects that are in that plan would be starting design kind of at the back end, like the far end, like 28. And, this project's really not on that list right now. So, it probably can't get into that 23 to 28 plan. So like Josh said, it's on a 2-year cycle. Probably 25 to 30 is the next plan it would get in. And that means we start design in 30. And not many of us are talking about things in the 2030s yet, but that's really what we're talking about. So I think I don't know the probability of it becoming a project, but if it does, it's not going to be real soon.
Yeah.
And if I can jump in, because I hear, talking about a project and but I guess, my thing is, it's been so long since this original study. I don't even know that the concerns now are what they were then, which I think you hinted at earlier. And I think we need to know from folks, what are the concerns about Old County Road? I mean, it doesn't seem like traffic has gone up significantly at all. People may think that, but the numbers are what they are. We have made the different improvements, and I know I've worked to get some of these since I've been in office, with the truck restrictions and the signs and all of that stuff. So are we looking at do people really have a real desire to widen the road, to put in turn lanes, to take out trees? Do people really want to give up parts of 15 feet of their front yards and 15 feet of their driveways? And I'm not saying people don't, and I'm not at all trying to kind of just poo-poo the whole idea and getting back to that, the tone here is this isn't going to be a project. That's not the perceived tone at all. I think the tone of this town hall is mainly, we want to let people know, here's where we were, here's where we are, and here's what would need to be done if you want these kind of, improvements. And I guess my question is, what would this improve? What problems do people think that this would, widening the lanes, putting in shoulders, all of that would solve?
Yeah, Representative Morrison, I think that's great to kind of bring it back, because what the recommendations were based on that plan was based on input back then. And there are a lot of smaller intermediate or short-term or medium-term improvements that can be done based on what the current concerns are now, that may not need to be in a full-blown project. That it could be signage, or it could be some guardrail, or it could be, I don't know, rumble. I wouldn't say, I don't want to say, I won't say rumble strips, but just there's a whole host of short-term things that can be done based on what the residents think are the issues.
Well, it looks like we still have a good, 34 people that are signed into the meeting. And maybe now is a good time for, for us to ask, look, if can you type in just a couple of words? What are your concerns with Old County Road today? So that we'll get some sense from listening to the folks that are here, what are the concerns? Is it safety? Is it multimodal? Tell us what the concerns are that you're having that really kind of brought you here today to talk about Old County Road.
And also, let me remind, because I served on the Public Advisory Committee for Wilmette-Co for 15 years before I got on the council, and then I got off just because I didn't think it was good to have like an official on a Public Advisory Committee meeting. We get it. But, if it is something that the community, or a large number or a significant number of community thinks is important, they need to contact like Heather Dunnigan and the folks up there at Wilmette-Co, because the first step they will do is a community meeting, almost a feasibility study, and they will actually help sort out some of these issues as well. They do a really good job with that to help you walk through. They have a very talented staff that can work with communities and strike some of those differences, and then come with some good guidance to DelDOT for a project. Well, here's what we did through these workshops with the community, whether it's I don't know if you could do a walkable community workshop up there, you get run over on Old County Road, but so there's a process. You go to the public meeting. If you have 10 people from one community show up and say there's a concern for the same road, they're going to take a hard look at it, because that's a lot of public input for them, believe it or not. And that's a starting point. I also want to point out that something might be a little bit different for the next few years on that list of projects. And that's that today it looked like they in Washington are coming together for a bipartisan bill, $550 billion Some of that I would think would be possibly coming to Delaware. If it's federal funds, my guess is you're going to be picking off of that list and drawing it down a little quicker than we have been able to do probably in 30 years. So, if this is a project that's important, I think I am hoping that what will happen at the federal level with some of this infrastructure funds is that DelDOT might be able to get a little bit of shot in the arm that we haven't had since the early 90s with the 21st Century Fund when we got all those sheep taxes. We're way behind. We might get a slug in the arm. So if it's something you want to press and at least get a feasibility study, now's the time to work with them and get it on the list.
Yeah, the federal funds, that's a big question mark right now. As you know, there's a lot of wrangling in DC, so we'll see how that all shuffles out. The one other thing is, as folks start to put in their concerns, is that one of the main concerns that DelDOT heard back in 2004 was at the intersection at Glasgow Avenue. And so I just want to reiterate that is on the books that we're going to be working on starting this year. So that is in the medium term, that we're going to be starting design, again, coming back to the public, talking about the impacts of that and the operational benefits, et cetera. So that was one of the main things from back in 2005. And we are moving ahead with that piece of it. So just to remind everybody of that. I don't know if I want to, as I'm glancing over, hopefully I'm not being rude because I'm glancing at my other screen, but I see the one question, maybe to punt it back to Josh, was how specifically do they get in front of WillMapco?
So yeah, that's actually a pretty easy one to answer because they, they've got a newsletter, they've got, you can get on their email serve, right? Their I guess, constant contact, right? Newsletter and so forth. The best way is just to visit their website. It's willmapco.org. And, or just Google search WillMapco, right? You can see how it's spelled there on the slide. Would just be to get connected with them, get on, like their page on Facebook. That's the simplest way that you can be informed of when they are initiating certain planning documents. Now, of course, you can also send them emails anytime to their contact emails. And I believe Councilman Carter did mention Heather Dunnigan. She's the coordinator for the capital programming side. So she's listed on the website as well. So really I would say, just to go back and answer the question again, would be, step one would be just to familiarize yourself with the organization. Go to their website, learn about their process. Send them an email if you want to start the conversation. And then, like I said, just get on their list to be informed of when things are happening. For example, the next time that they kick off a major update of their regional transportation plan, and that's the big planning document. That's the one that looks out 20 years. You can be involved with that discussion early on.
I have a question for DelDOT because it looks like a number of people have raised the issue of speeding as a concern. Would the project of widening the road help with the speeding concern, or would that actually encourage people to go faster because it's wider and you can see?
I would think for that concern, it would do what you just said, Senator. If we widen the road, I would expect faster speeds. In some respects, the narrow road and the closed-in tree canopy today, really encourages lower speeds. And if we widen it out, go drive over on House School Road that we just had so that House School Road's not far from here, right? And we just had a project somewhat similar in scope as to what this project could be. Again, very similar, widening out, turn lanes at the developments, multimodal path. And again, that's much more open now. I haven't checked the speed data, but I doubt it went down. It probably went up.
And thank you.
The one caveat we have with it is without the shoulders, it's really hard for us to find a good place to put a county police officer to give them tickets on a regular basis because we don't have any place to pull them over. So, if we look at, that's one thing that we can consider as well. if you give out, 10 or 15 tickets every 3 months, you tend to slow them down.
Well, and then there's also the controversial idea of automated speed enforcement.
Yep.
Which would require legislation. But we are doing our first pilot of that we have authorization to do our first pilot of that in the I-95 work zone. We just got the authorization through the legislature as session ended back in June. And so that's kind of our first pilot. We're currently coordinating with state police and our vendor on that. But we hear that complaint all day. That the number one complaint we get in our traffic engineering division, at least, I'm not talking about potholes, which our maintenance folks would get. So potholes is probably number one, but speeding is, for us in traffic engineering, is number one. And then trucks is number two.
And if I can jump in, and Senator Hansen, thank you for asking that question, because yes, that's what I've been told many times, and I've done my own digging. And when you widen a road, you actually, people speed faster. For example, here we have Brennan Estates, which has a very wide entry road, and people tend to speed down there like a freeway. But I live here in a development with a much narrower road, and that doesn't happen nearly as much. It's just kind of a psychology thing. What I will say is, some of these things that I see being put in here, such as speeding and the trucks, these things are common amongst all the roads, throughout the county, or in terms of whether you're talking about Denny Road or Fraser Road or other roads, even 896 and 40. So I know that these are concerns on Old County Road, but they're not unique. And I probably follow up with the Newcastle County and State Police a couple of times a week, asking them to do enhanced patrolling in certain places. But there's only so much of that, that can go around. We have done the signs, and hopefully, that will help some. But some of those things are just common to a lot of roads, and I don't know, what we can do in terms of really changing that with a big project. One thing I did, and two other things I'll say, I do see some people talking about shoulders and talking about turn lanes. So what do those, Mark, in your experience, do those actually make roads safer when we're talking about turn lanes or widening roads? Do those things actually make roads safer? Do they make fewer accidents?
So it depends on the specific area. Depending on the traffic volumes and the flows and the turning movements, certainly the turn lanes can be very beneficial. If you don't have a separate left turn lane, then you have we call it the sitting duck problem, right? You're sitting there waiting for a gap in the opposing traffic, and you can get rear-ended. Now it's less in those things are more important on even the bigger roads, the Route 40s, or I'm trying to think of the Route 72s in our area. The more of the major collector and arterial roads, and probably less so on Old County Road, because the volume is lower. So the chances of either you not getting a gap to make, say you're going from from Fraser Road down Old County and you want to turn left into Farmington, the volumes on Old County Road are such that you usually don't have to wait very long to make that left turn. So you're not sitting out there very long with the chance of getting rear-ended by somebody who's not paying attention. So it's more important on a road like Route 72, where the volumes are significantly higher and the speeds are higher. So it's a depends. But I will say that there's nothing for either WillMAPCO or DelDOT that says, hey, this road doesn't have shoulders or doesn't meet our standards, we have to fix it. Like, there's nothing like that out there. And like, some people have that misunderstanding that, someday we have to fix all the roads and put shoulders on. No, we don't. And so first of all, that would be, I don't know, trillions above dollars, because we have a lot of back roads. And again, the back road, this somewhat of a back road if I'm not offending anybody that lives there. You know, it has a fair amount of traffic volume for that kind of a road, the 3,000 some vehicles a day. But I mean, geez, think about some of the roads up in the Hockessin area with the you know, to fix those roads like is significantly harder than, right, exactly, with, or the drop offs into the creeks and whatever. So,
yeah. And it all depends on who you talk to, because there are people that even live, you know, up on Brackenville and, you know, Mount Cuba, and they want it to be narrow and want it to be, you know, like a country kind of narrow road. So yeah, it's
right. And then, and also like Pam said, who you talk to. So again, I can't say I've done it a lot, but half dozen times I've been bicycling on Old County Road. So I feel comfortable doing that. So if you see the goofy looking guy with the DelDOT vest biking on his mountain bike, that's me. And I feel comfortable doing that. But my kids are, you know, they're teenagers now. If they were like little kids on their tricycles, no way I'm taking them on Old County Road, right? So it's from a bicycling perspective, it's your, you know, are you the high type bicyclist that is willing to, you know, be on the roads with no shoulders or be out on 896? Or if you're the family, you're probably not. And same with pedestrians. Like I can't say I've ever personally walked. My kids have walked on Old County Road, not a lot, but a couple times. But you know, certainly you don't want little kids out there.
I can add, so, and I don't mean to take your job away, Megan. I'm kind of looking in the Q&A here. So two things. The first one is I see some talk of the blind curves, and I don't know what can be done about them. I don't know if folks are saying we should completely kind of reshape the road, or I don't know. So I'll get your thoughts on that. The other thing that I see here, if we could address, is like someone is saying there are 3 approved development projects that are going to impact Old County Road. So first, do we know, are they really going to impact the road? And if so, how much?
So for the curves, I talked a little bit about that. We are going to make sure that at least from a curve signing standpoint, that they meet all of the requirements, and the current requirements are more stringent, more signs than they used to be. So we've been adding curve signs to a lot of roads all throughout the state, and this one is on our near-term agenda. Again, we'll have those curve signs installed in the near future. You know, there were I have the crash data nearby somewhere. There were a fair number of run off the road type crashes. And so you would hope that and I will say, like, you know, talking about, you know, Representative, you were asking how the shoulders improve things. There is good data on if we get all the curve signs up to current standards, there is a good crash reduction that's documented from what we should expect from that.
And if I can, and I'm sorry to throw this out there, I don't mean to interrupt you, because something that I've learned a lot, certainly so far in my role as a state representative, is, for example, it's easy to look at a road and say, oh my gosh, there have been, you know, 30 accidents here this year. But then you've got to dig in and look at the why, you know. So for example, when you're looking at the curve issue, is it actually the curve, or is it people are not obeying the speed limit? You know, and so those are kind of 2 separate issues to a degree. Does that make sense?
Right. So as I pulled up the crash data that I can't really share, but I'm looking at it. About half the crashes in between the intersections were run off the road type crashes. About half of them. And there's really no cluster like right at any of the curves. So there doesn't appear to be like a strong correlation to the curves and where the crashes are. The crashes are really just spread out over the whole corridor with, again, no strong correlation to where the curves are. So again, we're still going to put in the curve. We're going to upgrade the curve signs to our current standards. But yeah, again, if this became a project, we could look at, if those are concerns, we would look at the impacts again of what that would take to kind of soften those curves. Now, again, there's the pro and the con of that. That may increase speeding as well.
Yes, Mark, and just to follow up on those subdivisions, I just got access to that software, so I'm a little bit dangerous. And so it looks like, yes, when I'm looking at Old County, there is the Harmony at Glasgow, which is I believe the 55 and
Yes.
over. And then, so they're contributing funds to the Glasgow Avenue project. And then there's Farmington, that's further to the west. We last created this input back in 2014 and they had an incomplete submittal. So I don't know anything about that. There hasn't been anything that's been recent.
I think, Pam, I think, and again, those of you who live out there know better. I think most of Farmington's done. They are developing 3 parcels right on Old County Road that are kind of separate. I think it's still part of Farmington, but separate from the main development. And those 3 residential properties are going to have one combined driveway onto Old County Road. Those are all in construction right now.
Okay. Gotcha. Okay.
So would it be fair to say that there's actually not a lot of construction, new development going on in that area that's going to put a lot of new traffic on Old County Road?
Yeah, I mean, for Representative Morrison, from what I'm seeing now, which is when something comes in to, when a developer comes in to ask for an entrance permit or to record their plan, they automatically get started into this PDCA software. And that is the only ones that I currently see on Old County. Now, the caveat is that, since it is relatively close to the Maryland line, we don't have information on anything that's happening in Maryland.
And then, I don't know if the person who put it in, like there is a fair sized residential development not far up the road on Fraser Road. I can't remember the name of it, but that's, those houses are, I think townhouses are popping up pretty quickly. And so some traffic from that would come to Old County Road. And, so there's certain other developments in the area. And again, like think about, the massive developments out on 896 that are, there's hundreds of new homes out on 896, right? And again, they're right next to me, but I can't, the one between 896 and Mansion Farm, and then the one north of Rose Hill, there's a lot of development out on 896, which would contribute some traffic to Old County Road.
Now, she did mention specifically here, thank you, Ann, the new developments, Village at Pineview, Glasgow Commons, and Harmony.
Okay, Pineview and Glasgow Commons must be up in Dave's district. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I see the village at Pineview is off of Frenchtown and Fraser Road.
Yeah, so
yeah, that's the one I was talking about, a little bit farther north. But again, I don't, not to nitpick it, that will generate traffic that some of that will use Old County Road. I suspect most of that traffic is going to end up going north on Fraser Road to Route 40. But some of it will certainly come south and go to Old County Road.
Yeah.
Yeah, if it's somebody moving in that's working in Dover or down in Middletown, they're going to come that way.
Right. Agreed.
They're going to avoid 40.
Absolutely. Right. Right.
Okay.
Do we want to go back to some of the questions?
Yes.
There are a couple hands raised as well, so I don't want those folks to think that we're ignoring them. So Mark, I'm going to punt this one to you. The question is, what's the definition of local delivery as it applies to the sign restricting truck size?
Sure. Ironically, that was undefined until this legislative session as well. And that passed this session. It's local delivery is a delivery, a beginning or an end point within the segment of road that has the restriction.
Okay, let's move to some of the hands that are raised. John, if you want to unmute yourself.
Thank you. I actually just wanted to take a moment this evening to thank the members of DelDOT in our meeting. This morning, an overpass of Route 1 was discovered. Faced with Nazi symbolism, DelDOT responded quickly and appropriately by removing it from the overpass. Hate has no place in Delaware. It's a wildfire. It will take every inch we give it. It has no place in our legislature. One of your colleagues perpetuated the very.
We are not discussing this. We are not discussing this tonight. Thank you. Can we move on to the next question, please? Thank you.
Anne, I know.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh,
We've answered some of your questions, I believe, via chat.
I know. And
Okay.
I have some scattershot comments. I think I would like to underscore the idea that, you know, yes, there are major impacts that might take place on Old County Road, and that certainly the direct residents need to, you know, think about that a lot. I would say 80 people got together 15 years ago, and it didn't matter. So now everybody's got to start from scratch. And having the time to do that, I think would be important without playing catch up. As I said, there are 3 development projects that have been approved that, you know, Old County Road's a cut through. The construction vehicles, you can have truck signs, but if local deliveries are for the construction sites, that's going to impact. And the road has been substandard for how many years? Capacity and conditions are different things. If you put signs up, you need the resources to police them, which we don't have. The money might be insufficient to do upgrades in the future, which now the community has to completely re-gear for and may not completely agree on. Meanwhile, development is taking place. And there were 10 things that were identified on page 3 of the 2005 study, like stopping site distance, which was insufficient on Old County Road. You know, no more capacity. You know, I mean, not one more. If it's already insufficient, and 3 major developments, and we're not even talking about the one in Maryland on 213, are going to be potentially using this as a pass through, you know, that's going to be a problem. So again, I would underscore, please, please, please weigh in on the comprehensive plan and give the community the tools to do that. Also, drainage, important, crash data. I know from the Smith Packet development, I know you said the county approved it. The county waived crash data because it was suppressed by Homeland Security. I saw your crash data and the crash data on the studies that Representative Morrison and Hansen put together, and none of it precedes 2018. You know, for Fraser Road, it went all the way back to 2014 on the little studies. So I would ask that you take a look at that Homeland Security data. Community members can't get a hold of it, developers can, and representatives can. And I think that's the last thing. Oh, and also as far as capacity goes, just, you know, FYI, yes, Smith Packet came in under, but their initial numbers for a building of that size and capacity when they built in Dover was 750, and that would have triggered an automatic traffic study, and DelDOT came back and said, oh, use this new formula, and they did, and it took them down to 450, which they cut down to 425 for Old County. So, you know, I don't know how using a different formula can take 750 trips down to 425, but apparently it did. If you put all that aside, 2005 study, page 3, 10 items, also things like drainage, driveway density, those kinds of things. Developers are not being held to those issues. Development's not being considered in terms of those issues. It's happening, and the community has to start from scratch. So please, please, please think about that, police resources, and weigh in on the comprehensive plan because, we'll, 5 years from now, the community gets together and decides, and then there's 6 more developments that have been approved, and we're behind the 8 ball, and we would have been ahead of it had the 2005 study moved forward. So thank you for everyone for putting this platform together. It's very, very much appreciated.
Oh, did anybody from DelDOT have, that was a lot there, and thank you, Ann. But did anybody have any thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, I agree, and I struggle with it on county council, and I, quite frankly, argue a lot with my general manager of land use that we need to do a better job looking at the cumulative impacts. We do everything site by site. I'm hoping the comp plan can improve that. I mean, it's bad here. What Senator Hansen and I are dealing with just south of the canal is going to be even worse with all the developments going on once we run sewer there. So, and to the extent that you guys are comfortable from DelDOT giving us a little nudge in the county, please do. It's a problem. We got to figure out how to fix it. And it's not your fault, but you end up dealing with it. So any guidance you give us to make it a little easier and get a handle on this ahead of time would be great. I think we should do mega TISs for whole regions. I don't think we should do them for individual developments anymore.
Well, I mean, Councilman, so we do that. It's called a transportation improvement district.
Yeah.
And we have a bunch of them throughout the state. This area is not within one of those transportation improvement districts. So there is a way to kind of do the mega TIS, but this area is not in one, at least at this time.
Yeah.
So of all of Ann's comments, Representative, like you said, there was a lot in there. The one, again, so from my perspective, I am happy to work on this as a project, but it has to go through that whole process. Like I can't change that. And then the comment about the traffic numbers. So I wasn't involved with that. Nobody on this call was involved directly with, approving those traffic numbers. I will say that estimating traffic from developments is, there's always new data that comes in, and our folks are always trying to stay on top of the latest and greatest data. And so that changes over time. Again, although I wasn't personally involved, I trust our staff that work on that. And if they made a change, I trust is because there was documentation behind that change, not because that they were trying to help a development get approved. But we could look further into that if needed.
I do see a question. Oh, I'm so sorry, Megan. I'm taking your job. Go.
No problem. So there's one final hand raised from Steve Griffith. I'm going to unmute you.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, I do want to say thank you to everyone from DelDOT and our Senator Hansen and Councilman Carter and Rep Morrison for being here and doing this for everybody. And I pretty much put everything in the Q&A written already. It's a lot frustrating, having lived here 27 years and seeing the conditions on Old County, especially when it snows and it never gets plowed, and the lack of shoulders. Luckily I've never been in an accident, but I've seen it, and over the years there have been multiple fatalities down around that curve, going way back, and again this year. But also it's frustrating to hear you all kind of, minimize I'm sorry if I'm over generalizing about this, but I mean, the impact that this Harmony at Glasgow is going to have all by itself, I think is going to be tremendous. So maybe traffic hasn't increased as much as was forecast in the 2005 study, but now you're talking about another 425 trips a day. Village at Pineview is clearly going to add traffic to Old County. People coming and going that have to go south on 896 from there are clearly going to use Old County Road. This Glasgow Commons thing up across from People's Plaza is going to add traffic to Old County. And then God only knows what this Southfields at Elkton thing is going to be. But if it gets built, it's going to be huge. And again, it's going to add traffic to Old County. So, you know, this road was substandard 15 years ago, and it's only gotten worse. And all of these developments together are going to make it worse. I don't know how else to say it other than it's, you know, what you all have been touching on this, that the cumulative impact of these developments needs to be, you know, taken together. So, you know, I guess I'm preaching to the choir at this point, but I will only emphasize that, you know, what Councilman Carter was asking, if there's any way DelDOT can help with encouraging or causing the, you know, Newcastle County comprehensive plan to restrict development, do this corridor preservation, whatever it's called, you know, that really would be helpful.
If I can jump in, because I wanted to ask you a question about your question. So,
sure.
And also maybe have some folks to speak to it. So, you know, I'm a big numbers guy, and I've dealt with numbers most of my career. So, you know, where are you getting your numbers in terms of the 425 trips per day for that facility? And
for Harmony, that's right. That's right out of their plan. It's right on their development plan, the 425 trips a day.
Okay, so specifically on Old County.
Yes.
Okay.
And
well, that Harmony at Glasgow has only the one access on Old County. That's all. So all their traffic will go on to Old County.
Yeah, and the split, there was some sort of a split. I believe it was roughly 80% would go towards 896 and 20% would go towards, you know, to the west. I may be a little bit off on that, but
yeah, I don't have it in front of me, but the 400 sounds correct.
Okay. And when you say the road was substandard 15 years ago, what are you judging that based on? And I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just asking what you're judging.
Well, so I'm basing that on the 2005 corridor study where it you know, basically DelDOT said, yeah, the lanes are not wide enough. The shoulders are not, basically there aren't any shoulders. There are, I forget the term, but there are obstructions too close to the road, telephone poles, trees, etc. And you know, so I look at that and I say, well, you know, that says to me, this is substandard. If you were going to build this road today, you wouldn't be allowed to build it the way that it is, you know, currently built. Right.
And Mark, to jump in, Mark, is that correct that is what that study said in 2005, is that the road was insufficient?
So I don't know what the best wording is, but yeah, there's certainly a lot of things that don't meet current standards on that road, just like many other roads throughout the state. That's why I was kind of getting into that earlier, is that, and again, I hopefully nothing, if something I said came across as trying to minimize that my intent was not to minimize anything. My intent is to give the facts as best as I can, but there's as I said, the crash rate on Old County Road is significantly higher than the statewide average of other types of roads that are similar to that. But it's also not so high that it's ever ranked in our top tier of crash problem locations that we would have studied under our annual hazard elimination program. So it's, you know, so I kind of went through that. But yeah, I mean, you know, a road of this type, if to meet all of the standards, right, some of the curves aren't up to the right dimensions. Like Ann had mentioned, some of the sight distance, you don't have all the sight distance that you need, etc. But again, there's no there's no obligation or requirement for that says we have to go back and fix every, quote unquote, fix every road. Because again, so just because, and there's also a change in the philosophy of things as well, where maybe 20 years ago or 30 years ago, we would have said, yeah, we really want to do that. But again, like think of all the all the smaller roads throughout the state that have, no shoulders and again, trees right up against the edge of the road, wetlands nearby, natural impacts, property impacts. Now this road may be a road that's a good candidate in a growing area to do a project like was proposed. And again, we DelDOT, we are good. We have no problem working on it. If it comes through the process, we are happy to work on it. It would be a good project, but it would be an impactive project. All the things that I talked about, the property impacts, the tree impacts, the wetlands, et cetera. So it would be impactive.
And I'm sorry, the gentleman who's speaking I'm so sorry. Is your name Steve? Is that right?
Yes.
Steve, do you live on Old County Road?
I live in Adams Run, which is the only access is via Old County.
And I guess, that was kind of, and please don't take this that, the way it may sound, but, again, I'm just, we're not getting much, feedback here from people in terms of, are they willing? Are they looking to, lose marshland? Are they looking to have trees cut down? And are they willing to throw their hands up and kind of say, hey, yeah, I'll give up the first 15 feet of my front yard or 20 feet of my front yard. I don't know how people feel about that. And I don't know if anybody wants to drop anything in the Q&A, but that's something that we really do have to consider.
Sure. Yeah, everything has to be considered. And I don't claim that I know what all these people would say.
I just wanted to, just so I didn't lose the thought. I can also, I jotted down, you had said stuff with the site, the distance and stuff. I'll contact our canal district engineer, Brian Schilling, just to see if there is any, we're responsible for the maintenance within our right of way, for clear site the distance and stuff. I mean, if it's on private property, we can't cut the trees back, but within our right of way swath, we can do some trimming. So I can check with Brian to see if there's any way that he can just verify that or kind of clean up. That's part of their jobs for the canal maintenance. And then I can just let him know about the salting of the road too. They plan a lot on, when to salt which roads to salt first and stuff. Obviously it's based on, the higher volume roads and the interstate and 896 and Route 40 and everything. But I can at least just mention to him that there was concern about the snow and salting.
And one question I'm wondering, and thank you for that, if we can get to real quick, and again, Megan, I'm taking your job. You're not going to answer any of my emails for a week, but I think this is a good question. Is there a way to make the road multimodal without actually widening the road?
Well, one option that I am looking at is whether or not we can work with the communities and with their open space and with a little bit of acquisition and put a offset trail that connects communities that's not even adjacent to the road. And it might be possible to piece some of those together. I think that's really something I need to talk to my parks designer in our public works department. But there are some ways that you might be able to do some of those things. And if the community wants, I think for a lot of the questions about do people want the road changed and set back, I think everything I'm hearing sets it up for Will Mapco to do a workshop feasibility study. And I'm happy to call Heather tomorrow. If any of the community members want me to do that, just send me an email. I work with all the folks at Will Mapco all the time. I think just to get those things kind of clarified and answered for us a little bit, that would help, I think, give DelDOT some guidance and some other stuff to move forward with it. And, the Harmony of Glasgow, when you think back about the study of 2005, Harmony of Glasgow prior to 2005 would not have been a by right development under the Unified Development Code. Under the Unified Development Code, you could only do single family homes unless you went through, at that time, a community character hearing. And the council in 2005 took that hearing step out and made these things by right. So what they're dealing with the suburban zoning in this area is completely different from what they were dealing with in 2005. You now have 17 options under suburban zoning. Back then, they were not by right options. You had to go through a whole series of hearings and essentially get an upzoning through the community character hearing under section 3.319 of that code. So a lot has changed that impacts in the area. But I think everything I've heard tells me that we ought to look at whether or not we can get it on the list for at least a good feasibility evaluation. And if it gets through that and it shows that it's likely and it shows there's interest, they'll articulate a lot of these concerns that we've heard tonight. And then from there, once you get that worked out, that whole public process worked out, you give it to the engineers and, they can run with it. They can engineer whatever once they know what's desirable and what's acceptable. So if anybody wants, I'm happy to make that call and see what we can do to get Will Mapco started, see if we can get on the list, maybe have a workshop and a feasibility study and kind of go from there. And I'll keep trying to work what we can through the comp plan. And anybody else who wants to join in, I could sure use your support.
Is there anyone on the call, anyone here that has property where they actually front on Old County Road that are not part of Adams Run or Farmington or one of the other developments that empty onto Old County Road? I'm just trying to get a sense as to property owners who we will hear from, if we're not hearing from them now, when it comes time to discuss eminent domain and widening the road. Is there anyone here that that lives along Old County Road like that? All right, I don't think so.
Maybe they were here, but they left. I know we're getting a little late, but that's a very good question, Senator Hansen. Thank you. So if I can, and I know we're getting late, and thank you, everybody. I think, we definitely want to wrap this up at 9 or by 9. I know we lost a few participants, but still got a lot of you hanging strong. So Councilman Carter, just so I understand, this study that you're talking about, what exactly, and excuse my ignorance, but what exactly would that provide? What would that do? What's the timeline, and how does it involve the public?
So what you would do is we would look at what the schedule is. I don't know where they are on their work plan for this year, whether they've already taken up all their community workshops and that stuff at Will Mapco. You just ask them if they can do one. And whenever they have their public hearing, you ask if this be considered as a potential project. And you get a list. And once they get it on a work plan for Will Mapco, they'll hold community workshops to begin to look at the road and the feasibility. They'll do some walkthroughs. This one is easy. You got the conservation district you can meet. So a lot of the things that we're doing here, you have transportation planners who will capture that. Oftentimes they'll do a survey with it. They may, on this case, there's only about 40 houses that looks like fronting the road. They may do a hand-delivered survey down the road working with us to touch in with those landowners. And from there, they'll capture what they learn, what the desires are, of the community, what some of the obstacles might be. And then they may make some initial recommendations that consider. And then, that goes typically to the next step if you get into, there's a whole series of steps you go to. If they get funded to do some design work. And, and then the designers take that and see what they can make work out of it. And then you can get into engineering and that stuff. So it's really the first step just to see, is it actually feasible? Are you going to have some obstructions or people that get so upset or it doesn't make sense? Or are there only pieces? Maybe fixing the 2 intersections at each end and, and some tree work and curb signing is enough. I don't know. But they'll look at all those options. And of course, they start from do nothing to a major upgrade of the whole road. And my guess is it's somewhere in between those. So that's what Will Mapco will help with. And they are really good holding these community workshops. They do charrettes and other stuff. They just do a really good job.
And I don't know how and thank you so much for that, Dave. Councilman Carter, Dave, back and forth.
That's fine. Doesn't matter to me.
Either way, you'll answer, right? So that to me, I don't know how everyone else feels on the entire call. That to me sounds like a natural next step. And again, what we would need, to be frank, is we would need the community and the folks who are on this call to commit to, attending those sessions and to keep up with the feedback. There's there's so few elected officials in Delaware, and we have so much, and we need the community. We need your voices on things like this. So Dave, what do we need to do to get that started? What do you need?
So I can put a call in and talk to Heather or Dave Gola, or I can call Tigas, who's executive director. I'll find. I don't know if they're back in the office, but they're still doing email, and they'll call me back and just talk to them and get an outline. I can send it to, I have Steve and Angie contact information, but I can send it to them and send it to you, Eric, and send it to Stephanie, whoever else wants it. Once we find out what their scheduling is, and then we can try and get it on the list and have it, if we can get it on the list, then I think we can get their help. But I mean, I can make, to me, to try and get it on the list and do a more structured type of workshop just makes sense.
Yes. Yes.
So I'll do that tomorrow. I'll start that tomorrow.
Representative Morrison, we do have one more raised hand from PJ. Going to allow you to talk. You may need to unmute. PJ, can you hear us?
Oh,
Okay.
I think I got it that time.
Oh, here we go. Yep.
I actually didn't intend to hit that button, but I guess I did. I was thinking about asking a question or a suggestion. I don't live on Oak County Road. I live in a neighboring Caravel Farms. But, I do see where there would be a lot of concerns. If I was a homeowner living on that road, having that road close to my home, even if I was compensated for it, do we have other options to make it safe? I've lived in this area since '85, and I know speed a lot of times is a factor. Do we have options where, I don't know how you're going to get a cop to sit on that road, the police, but what about other technologies, cameras, things that are, making it safe? I know the representative had a speed limit sign that tells you what your speed is on Old 896. That may not be absolutely effective, but do we have other technologies? Do we allow a camera to be taking a picture to send a person a ticket for speeding, to curb, bad behavior that's causing some of these accidents? I personally do travel on Old County Road. I have property over in Elkton, over by the Elk River, and I do travel on Old County Road, but I can tell you I'll never travel on that road at night. I'll only go on it during the day because I don't feel safe on that road at night. So I guess it's more of a suggestion and a question, if it's possible. And also, my representative for the 27th district, I do appreciate you bringing this out. And also, I think I've been more involved on these Zoom meetings than I've ever had in the, the decades that I've lived here. So I appreciate you bringing this and making a forum where people are easy to attend.
Thank you. Yep.
So PJ, my guess is there are other options. I don't know what's available or to be considered. But if we get a project, you can look at that, and that feasibility phase may come back and say, do these couple of, behavioral things, do some other things, fix the 2 intersections, and don't widen it. But my guess is there's a whole range of options from one extreme to the other. And, from that perspective, I think taking a good look at it and getting a few other folks in that deal with this a lot and try and solve these problems might be a good way to start. And, I do have concerns as well about, I'd hate to lose my front yard when, then you get noise and everything else and cars are going faster. So it's always tough.
Great. Well, it's 8:55. So I think, and I want to thank everybody. I don't think we have any more questions. I want to thank DelDOT. This was wonderful. I want to thank Senator Hansen. I want to thank Councilman Carter. I want to thank everybody who attended. It sounds like the next step is that Councilman Carter is going to ask, I'm not going to say it right. It's too late.
Wilmapco. Yeah.
Wilmapco.
Okay.
Trying to put the accent on the call.
I would just give them a call and get a definitive, what are the steps? What do you need to do to have them consider a look at it, and and when's their next workshop, that kind of stuff. I can get that from them quickly. And then if people are interested, they can just relay it directly to them, and we can urge them and go from there.
And I'll work on getting that communication out in the same channels that we use to get this out. So great. All right. Did anybody have anything else?
Just thank you so much. This is really helpful. I don't know. One of these days, I'm going to figure out how the county is going to work much more closely with DelDOT. We're getting better at it, but we're still not good. We'll get there sooner or later. I hope.
Okay, great. Well, thank you, everybody, and more to come. Appreciate it. Have a good night.
Great. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.